Yo, what's good, everybody? My name's Alckemy. Welcome to the channel. I've got this little pet peeve when it comes to like trying to find drums and stuff, specifically with trap. What I mean by that is if I go on the internet and I look up how to make trap drums, 9 times out of 10, what pops up is stuff like drum patterns or how to make hard modern trap, which, I'm sure that this stuff is super valuable and, super useful, especially for beginners and stuff of how to make these types of beats. But something that annoys me is that there's not really a whole lot of stuff other than like this dude that teaches you how to actually make these drum sounds from scratch, how to actually synthesize them. Now, if you know my channel, you know that I've been making drums on my channel forever, and I do things for a different genre, which is related to hip hop, but it's called halftime. But making clean drum sounds just isn't really like that easy to find on the internet. So I'm here to remedy that, and I guess I'll just play this demo beat for you, and then if you like the drums, then we can talk about how they were made from scratch. So this is what it sounds like. It's very simple. We're really only going to be talking about the main layers about how this was made. But yeah, and the other thing too is like while you're designing these, there's so many different ways to shape kicks and snares and stuff that even if you don't end up with the exact same timbre, like don't sweat it. It's about understanding the principles that go into making transients and drums alike, and you'll get better over time. There's a few people that I need to shout out in this video: Chi, Cage, Zane. Love you all. Thank you so much. They pretty much taught me everything that I know about drum design that I use today. And what I did after spending a lot of time with those guys, not Chi specifically, but watching his masterclass and stuff, is figuring out how to do all this stuff within Phaseplant. So you don't have to have Phaseplant in order to do this. There's going to be a lot of overlapping information. This is going to be a very long video, so if you're like really down for learning drums, this is going to be the video for you. If not, you just want to use samples, then maybe go watch some of the other videos that are on there. Sorry, one more thing. I'm trying to get to 20,000 subscribers. I've got a giveaway going on with a plugin called Distube Culture. It's one of my favorite distortion plugins. It looks like this. It's an excellent plugin, would highly recommend it anyways, but once I reach 20,000 subscribers, Arturia is collaborating with me to do a giveaway for the plugin. So please like the video, please subscribe to the channel, and yeah. So without further ado, we're going to be talking about kick, snare, clap, hi-hat, 808, and then drum bus. So we're not going to be covering things that are not like melodic, that are melodic and stuff. I might like touch on it, but I want to talk about how to get your drums going, how to make everything start rolling and having good energy. So if I were to play everything without the effects that's on the drum bus, it sounds like this. Which isn't terrible. It could be better, which I'm going to show you how to make it better. But before we get into all that, let's go ahead and start with the kick. So I'm going to turn all these off. Let's go ahead and listen to what this sounds like without the effects. It's okay. It works. So what we have here is a sine wave and some white noise. And that's what you need to know, is that it's a sine wave layered with some white noise. There is an envelope that is a pitch envelope attached to here. So you just drag this and connect it to here, about anywhere from like 19 semitones to 2 octaves. The higher up you go, the more lasery or the more tommy it will sound. But this is going to be the #1 characteristic of how you shape your kick sound. So if I were to do this with another envelope, just take a listen here. I'm going to turn this stuff off. Actually, I'll keep this on. But take a listen to this as we play around with different pitches. You see how and then if I were to play an octave up, there's a lot that you can get from that will kind of shape how your kit comes out. So I'd spend some time with that and try to find something that's right for you. The other thing that I started doing as of late is adding just a little bit of attack to this, because this will still give you a really nice thump, but if you pull off of this, you get a click. So if I turn this off along with the pitch envelope versus, let's turn this back on, it just kind of rolls it off and softens it a little bit. And if you do want a like specific click as well, then what you could also do is use a piece of white noise. But as you can tell, like there's a lot of different variations that you're going to find whenever you're doing stuff like this. So what we have here are just a few effects. It's really not too many, but we have some distortion, and I'm using the envelope here to create more distortion as this thumps. This was a trick that I learned from Saturn II. Then we have a low pass filter. And then we have more distortion that's going to help bring it all back. You can see here that it's already creating a pretty nice kick. So after that, we've got a compressor here that, if you don't know anything about compression, just high ratio, long attack, long release, turn the makeup gain threshold down for drums. There's a lot of different ways to use compression, but when it comes to kicks and snares, yeah, what I just said. So after that, we have a limiter, and we have some clipping here. This is just, I think this is just a soft clipper, and this will dictate the speed of how long it takes to clip. So we've got a pretty nice kick here that is very malleable, and we can continue to shape. So that trick that I was telling you about with Saturn II, I didn't actually know this. This was something I learned on a Dan Worrell video, but you can use an envelope follower here to boost the output or the drive of this. And what that does is it gives it a really nice thump. So you can see here that I'm also kind of using this as an EQ to take out the rest of the high end. So now it's kind of creating just like a cleaner thing. But that's kind of the process about how all this stuff works. Like one really important trick that I learned from Cage and Zane is to use distortion in stages. So as opposed to like 100% distortion, just boost it out, saturate, specifically saturate in stages. And if you do that and then you add some effects, subtly add a little bit more, subtly add a little bit more, you're going to find yourself building a really nice, rich sound. So the next thing that we have, again, low threshold, long attack, long release, turning the makeup gain. This is what we call parallel compression. So the philosophy behind this, if I were to start over, I'm giving you guys all the drum tips, I guess, is you start at 100% wet. You want to turn the threshold down to like -8 to -12. You want to add a long attack, a long release. And this is for drums specifically, high ratio. And what we're going to do is we're going to push this makeup gain until it starts to break. Right, obviously that's too far. So that's good, that gives it a nice little thump. So let's back off of this now. And now we have a nice middle ground in between, and that's how you use parallel compression. Yay! You can do this on kick, snares, drum buses, whatever, just that's how it works for drums specifically. So next up we've got Distube Culture. This is just going to add some character to the sound. You kind of have to, this is such a versatile distortion, but depending on the amplitude, depending on the harmonics you send into it, depending on, you know, how hot you drive everything, this distortion sounds drastically different. And that's what I love about it so much, is it seems like it's, you know, very basic with just a few knobs, but basically you kind of just have to listen to it and dial in some settings. But this is what it sounds like. Just add some work to it. And it might be barely even noticeable if at all. There we go. That's a little bit more audible now. This Pro Q3, I'm toggling on and off. I'm gonna skip this for now. We'll come back to it, but I'll tell you why later. Okay. So finally, we have a hard clipper, and that just gives it a nice thump. And that's our kick. So next up, we have our snare and our clap. So our snare is very similar to our kick. Actually, we're just playing a higher register, and we are using a much faster and sharper pitch envelope. So if I were to play this, this is what it sounds like. And if I were to turn off all the effects and this white noise layer, which we'll talk about in a second, this is the main component, which is the sine oscillator and the white noise oscillator. But that's really what it sounds like. So when it comes to this, if you have a pitch envelope that's super short, it's going to have this really nice click. And we want that for the snares. At least I do, because that's the kind of snares that I like to make. So from that, adding in a white noise layer with a bandpass filter around like 1K-ish, sorry, that's 3K apparently, and then giving this a little bit of delay right here so it's offset, gives you that classic 808 type of snare. And then this layer here is just kind of smearing everything together. It kind of helps gel the snare to make it not sound so much like it's a phlegm, and kind of gives it a little bit of space, as you can see that this has stereo on it as well. So this processing chain, I first learned from Chi and his masterclass. Later down the line, I realized that Kill the Noise also has a video on making drums in Serum, and he uses the same tricks. So the information is out there. I'm just giving you the phase plant version. But what I'm doing is I'm taking an envelope and I'm boosting this resonance here in conjunction to when the fundamental hits. So without it, it sounds like this. When I add this, it makes it a little bit more snappy, and it's accentuated whenever we use the distortion. So sounds pretty cool. I'm adding just a slight amount of ensemble to this. This is something that I just decided to do. You don't need to do this, but it gives it a little bit of smearing. This transient doesn't necessarily need to be in mono, just the fundamental does. But I mean, just a tiny amount of stereo is not going to really affect the sound to where it's going to break. But to me, it sounds pretty nice. So this trick right here, I can't remember who I learned it from, but it's actually really cool. I'm going to show you a different demonstration with a different slice EQ, but you can actually colorize your 808 snare by adding certain boosts and dips in your high mids. So we're just going to do boost, but check this out. So you see how like many different sounds that you can get out of this, and there's not really a right or wrong. It's just a matter of, you know, what do you want to do? But for me personally, I'm adding just a slight boost here. I think I might have manipulated this a bit because I think that's where I had it. But yeah, just a slight boost in those high mids, and it creates a nice little sound. Now we have some compression. Again, long attack, long release, makeup gain up. And then we have a gate to cut any tails off that any of this distortion or whatever is creating. Sounds like shit, right? So the limiter is what's going to kind of help fix that. I don't know, it just works really well whenever you put a limiter at the end. It's obviously like cutting off the peaking sounds or whatever. But I don't know if I said this or not, but use a transient shaper at the end of your chain, because if you don't, then you get something like this. See how that sounds like all messed up? Put it after, and it actually helps kind of preserve the transient of the original sound. My buddy Avin explained it to me. I think what's going on is that the transient shaper sends such a hot signal into the limiter that it literally cannot handle it. It doesn't matter, just know that the transient shaper goes at the end. So there's not much after this for the snare, just a little bit of EQ. This is dynamic, kind of reducing the fundamental, kind of pulling back on those high mids that I boosted with a little bit of dynamic EQ, and then I'm boosting the high end here. Nothing crazy. And then after that, I'm adding some saturation here, which is just kind of adding saturation to the overall sound. So we're not boosting the fundamentals of anything or trying to make the snare harder. We're just kind of giving it a little bit of warmth. And fun fact, another thing that I learned from Avin, again, lots of shout outs in this video, is that if you're on the tape setting, then this will actually clip. So you can drive the signal really hot. It will not go over 0 dB. That's awesome. I didn't know that. That makes me love Saturn even more. So that's our snare. So next up, we've got a clap. And a clap is very similar to a snare. It's also very similar to a stick hit. So because I'm covering the clap, I usually go way more overboard with this. So if I were to pull up some clap use cases here, hold on one sec. Let me see. Yeah, you can hear that there's a lot of different ways to make claps. The reason why it sounds like that right now is because there's a high pass filter, but the reason why I'm covering this is because I'm going to show you the very basic way to do this, and realize that this is just a layer to help support the snare. So if you look at this, the clap's hitting right before the snare and it creates this nice little, and that's the reason why it sounds kind of pleasing. So in any case though, if I were to take this off, this clap is really just a multi-stage envelope to where you want to create a bunch of sawtooth waves and very short and very close to each other, and then have a longer one at the end, and that's what's going to create this kind of sound. We have a bandpass filter here, and I'm using some distortion. Again, if we were to pull up any of these other ones, I don't know why it sounded like that, but all of these are sounding the same, and I don't know why. Well, that's fine. There's some kind of bug that's happening, so we'll just hit undo a bunch of times. And just know that this is really all you need. So that's so weird. In any case, we have a high pass filter that is cutting off almost everything. And again, it's just adding a nice little subtle layer to this. So next up, we have the hi-hat. And yeah, I'm tripping out. I don't know why that was doing that. But so next up, we have the hi-hat. And this is probably way overcomplicated. But really what we're using this top layer for, and like, don't let this get to you. It's really just a square wave. That's all it is. That's kind of detuned, I guess. But with this in particular, we're using this to create a metallic layer. And the way that we're achieving that is by FMing the source with some weird waveforms that are at weird harmonic levels. So this is feeding into this, and this is feeding into that. And if I turn the noise off along with the filter, actually all this stuff, you see it's just a nice little like metallic hit. And then when you feed that in along with some noise, you get pretty much a hi-hat. And that's the reason why I'm high passing it, so that way we're kind of just getting the top end of that. From there, we are high passing again. And then we have some comb filtering and some chorus. And then I'm boosting the input gain of this. But other than that, I'm not doing anything to this on the outside. So, you know, just FM some stuff to create like a really short envelope that can give it kind of like a weird metallic hit, and then just smear it with noise, and then you've got your hi-hat. So yeah, so far we've got yeah, for some reason this clap is malfunctioning in a weird way. I think that this was supposed to be. There we go. Okay, so the next thing that we want to cover quickly is the 808. And what we have here is a couple of things. Now, what I want to talk about with this 808 kit is that if you take all this other stuff away, the most important takeaway from this, like if you just want the fastest access to an 808, then grab a sine wave, then grab another sine wave, and use a third harmonic here. So it would be equivalent to if you were to grab a wavetable and you have a single harmonic like this, which is the fundamental, and then you just pull this one up. This will also create an 808, but I'm just doing it with two different waveforms here. It gives you kind of a wonky looking shape like that. I'm using a curve here because I'm able to have more control over how the amplitude is stacked as opposed to it just going down. I want it to kind of hold on for a second, then dip down, then really dip down, so it creates a tail. But I mean, if you really just want to get a quick 808, right? Like you can literally just do that and then distort it or whatever. I am adding a little bit of FM here, both with a touch of a saw wave and some noise. And that's what's giving that kind of sound. So I guess the next thing that we have is adding some distortion. Again, distorting in stages as opposed to, and even still I'm being subtle with it, but yeah, distorting in stages is really helpful. But see, that makes it nice and fat. This is a trick that does not always work, but it works in this case to where I'm just boosting the low end and it creates a nice little like rumble sound. And then the saturator is going to make it, well, probably too far, but just bear with me. The multipass here is a chorus and distortion on the midband. Don't worry about this, we don't even need that, but this is enveloping a distortion here. So just like the kick, whenever the 808 hits, it's gonna boost the distortion and then pull back. So now we're gonna reduce some of the low mids. And then what really makes this all come together is the low pass filter. Like you really wanna cut it off just until it's like got, I don't know, where is this at? 260 or 280 hertz, and then it's just barely coming up. Yeah, this 808 is extremely over-engineered. You don't need to go this far, but I like to try to add my own personal characteristics to the sounds that I make, and this is just kind of a result of that. Add some compression after it, same thing, long attack, long release, high ratio, makeup gain, all that. You can have this thing called legato, so if you want to do like your 808 slides, just set your polyphony to 1 and then hit a fundamental or hit a note and then hit another one at the same time, or like hold on to one note and play the other one. So sorry, I did set this to legato. Let's do that. If you want this to hold on a little bit longer, then you can adjust the decay of this. So, right, but I don't really find that to be all that necessary for this particular tune anyways. But yeah, super easy way to create 808s. I did want to show you some variations of this because I think that's super helpful. Just like as I was talking about with kicks and stuff, like you can create all different kinds of 808 shapes. So my favorite one that I've made is this Phantoms one. That's almost the exact same way of how I made the one that I just showed you, but it's kind of rubber bandy. And then there's a bunch of other 808s that I've made. Easy 808, so. This one's pretty clean. That one's a really aggressive one. But yeah, I mean, they all kind of stem from the same thing. So you just use a sine wave and, you know, create a shape like this. And 808s are pretty easy. I actually had a really hard time learning how to do these. And now that I figured it out, it's like a big slap in the face to myself because I'm like, oh my gosh, I made this way more complicated than it should have been, but whatever. So the last thing that I want to talk about with this track are the busing effects or the grouping. And all you have to do is group everything into, you know, a single bus, and we've got just a few more effects. But yeah, we'll walk through that now. So this little group is a reverb, and I just like to use Valhalla Room. It just creates a little bit of space. So if we listen to that on its own. So you leave this at 100% mix and take off the low end, and then you gently mix this in to the original signal. I don't know what happened to this clap. It's not supposed to be doing what it's doing, but it's literally just like. Okay, that's better. Yeah, I don't know. I changed too many things and tried to change the preset, and then it's like not totally like doing something weird, so I apologize. But yeah, so once we have that on this group, then we also want to turn on the distube culture because it's just more characterization, which I really like. So Ah, that's what I did. Okay, so I actually had this turned down in comparison. I think that's why that's standing out a lot. So there we go. So turning down the clap in relation to the snare helps a lot because it makes it blend and makes it seem like it's part of the same sound. And I think what I did was at some point is I reset the volume on this and it sounded full volume. And so it was kind of overpowering the snare. And that's why I was like, that doesn't sound right. Sometimes it happens. So apologies. So the next effect that I have on here is a choice between two different ones. And we're going to talk about this because I think that it matters, but you're also going to figure out that it doesn't matter. So option A is the knock plugin, which sounds like this. Actually, let's play it without. So there's that one. And then option B is Saturn 2 along with the newfangled Saturate plugin, which is the clipping. But yeah, let's just listen to how that sounds. So, you know, I wouldn't say that one or the other is better. And I keep changing this all the time, but shaping the kick after you have all this other stuff, because I've noticed that like the kick is coming and sounding drastically different. Sometimes you might want to try to add an EQ now and go back and maybe take out the low mids because it can help you balance the rest of the sound out. And you might think that like, okay, you apply more distortion to everything and it all sounds good except for one instrument, right? So you can go back and try to fix that. Or again, going back to the knock plugin. Doesn't always work, but sometimes that can be helpful. It's just something to be mindful of. But really, essentially what we're doing is we're adding some transient shaping, some distortion, and then this little guy right here is actually the reason why I bought the knock plugin. But what this does is it adds a lot of high-end presence that is very clean, not to, you know, no pun intended, but is very clean to the top end. So if I were to take this off, take a listen. You see how that high end is much crispier. So Decap did a really good job with this on making that kind of shine. And so to kind of counteract that, you can see that I boosted the high end a little bit on this, which you can also do with an EQ as well. I just think that it sounds better with knock, but yeah, we're doing that same trick with the kick of adding a little bit more push to it on the bottom, and then instead of using the knock clipper, we're using this one to help kind of make it super loud. So, you know, it doesn't really matter which one you use depending on what you have. And if you have like drum bus, the glue compressor with a soft clip, if you have, you know, the fruity soft clipper, then that works too. OTT, you can do all different kinds of stuff to this. It doesn't really matter because at this point we have the fundamentals. So now we're just playing around with timbre and having a sense of taste for the final result, if you will. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So just to play the whole beat one more time, this is what this sounds like. So I've got this other idea too that has a little bit of rolling hats on this, but this is more of an original idea. This is a sample. This is chords and melodies and stuff, which I'm using way too many sine waves, so it's going to create some distortion, but it's fine. there you go. I guess if I can leave you with anything else, obviously there's a matter of mixing and stuff. I'm panning the hats to the right, and then playing around with the levels of what you're wanting to do is super important. But we can talk about that in another video. But anyways, I'm really hoping that this is the video that you find if you're looking for how to make 808 drums within something like Faceplant or Serum or Vital or whatever. If you're interested in the other drums that I have, or like the other drum masterclasses that I have for offer, then I'd ask that you sign up for the ARCANUM membership or check out the drum course that I offer on my website. We cover a lot of these fundamentals, but I go more in depth about how to really characterize your drums. These are just fundamentals. They're just, 808s, which is the most basic of basic. But in any case, thank you so much for watching. Please like the video. Let me know which beat you liked best in the comments section if you made it this far. If you have any questions, let me know as well. Hopefully this was interesting and insightful to you. And even if you don't like the drums that I've made, I hope that you were able to take something away from the concepts that I've taught today, because this is like 10 years of drums knowledge kind of wrapped into a single ultimate class. So thank you guys. I really appreciate it. And support the channel at alchemy.com. I'll see you guys in the next one.